Next, we're gonna learn a bit on this channel. We're gonna learn. So, for instance, I just basically found out that cloning is real. I guess this was a known thing. It was like since like 19 something, 1990 something, they had cloning. Never knew we can clone stuff, man. So we're gonna be learning a little bit on that. Looks like a little biology lesson. So let's get into that. How are animals cloned? Apparently, sheep can be cloned. Pause the video and think, are clones real? Yes, I know this now. Clones are real. Wouldn't be that cool. Yeah, I just learned that. Are clones real? I think clones are real, but only in sci-fi movies and comics. Clones in real life are impossible, right? Actually, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure plants can be cloned. Didn't we learn about that already? I didn't. When was this? Yep, link in the. Oh, they posted about that. What? Link in the description. So plants can be cloned too. Wow. So if plants can be cloned, animals can be too. So clones are real. Awesome. I would love to clone a million of me. Actually, on second thought, maybe this wouldn't be a good idea.
Are clones real, first of all? Absolutely.
Reject.
This is not a scientific, sci-fi, fictional idea anymore. This is
I'll respond to
very
chat
much
after, man. You guys are going crazy. Let's try to learn something though.
are clones real, first of all? Absolutely. This is not a scientific, sci-fi, fictional idea anymore. This is very much an advanced piece of technology that has been going on for a long time. And cloning in plants specifically has been going on for much longer than cloning in animals. However, clones of animals do exist. And in 1996, Dolly the sheep was created. And this
So 1996, Donnie the sheep was created. I'm guessing that's the first clone ever of an animal. Wow. 1996. So we've had clones for years of sheep.
was one of the
Donnie,
first
Dolly.
breakthrough pieces of research that actually was very successful in the fact that Dolly the sheep was a fully functioning organism from a parent organism, essentially, that had been used to clone this organism we now know as
Incredible.
Dolly. Of course, there are lots of ethical considerations, which we will discuss in this topic as well. And we're going to talk about the process of how this is done and, moreover, why this is done as well. But during this topic, lots of students often ask me in class, are twins clones? Can we clone plants? Can we clone humans? Have we cloned humans? Etc. So let's just clarify a couple of these things. First of all, are twins clones? Technically, no. If you think about a clone, it's a genetically um, identical organism, so living thing, that is what we mean by organism. However, a twin is not a clone. Although those twins may be genetically identical to one another, they are not a clone of the parent, which is very important because a clone is a genetic copy of the parent. So if you think about cell division like mitosis, that is essentially cloning a cell, because you're creating a cell that's not only genetically identical to the other cells, but the parent cell at which it came from. So twins are not necessarily considered clones. They are genetically identical to each other, but not the parent. And the next question was, can we clone humans? In theory, potentially yes. However, there are
Mm.
lots of ethical considerations regarding that. We want to think about the medical use or the need for this, especially with science and research. You often have to put proposals together. It has to get peer reviewed. It has to be sound. It has to be strongly linked to a need in the medical field. And at this stage in time, we don't have a medical need, really. You could argue the idea about transplants of organs and the low availability of those for people who may need a transplant. However, there are, like I said, so many ethical considerations here that we can't just say, yep, clone humans, that's absolutely fine, because, of course, lots of people will have ethical.
Right. So what if there is okay, I'm gonna give a need. So let's say you have an Einstein, right? Maybe it should only be allowed to clone people that are needed. So what I'm saying is geniuses. We need to clone geniuses so we don't lose their geniusness. If we had an Einstein, a modern day Einstein, let's say we cloned him, we still had Einstein to this day. Think about the places where we could be. He was a very smart guy. And that goes for a lot of people. So I'm just giving a need. I'm putting out a need out there. We need more smart people. We clone those smart people. Put that in the books.
Implications or ethical, thoughts about it. So we need to be very careful and mindful of that. But let's talk about the technology and what you need to know for GCSE. So, in the case of adult cell cloning, this is the one that they use for Dolly the sheep. So, we'll go with the sheep example. First of all, you have an organism which you are interested in creating more of. So, the desired characteristics. You would take an organ cell. So, in the case of Dolly the sheep, it was an udder cell that was taken from the organism of interest, and then the nucleus of that cell is removed from that adult cell. That's where adult cell cloning comes from, because we're taking a diploid cell, we're taking a fully formed adult cell, we're taking the genetic information of that from the nucleus. We then would take an egg cell from another organism in that species, and we would remove the nucleus of that egg cell and place the nucleus of the information that we're interested in of the organism into that empty egg cell, and then we would fuse it together using some electricity. And electric shock actually encourages cell growth, and then we would implant this embryo, this egg that has developed and started to divide, into the surrogate organism. And as you can see, once the baby is born, or
Hmm.
the offspring is born, it would have the same genetic characteristics as the cloned organism, so the original one that we got that genetic information from. And as you can see, with my diagram that I've drawn
Interesting.
here, you can see the phenotypes of the ones that are clones, not the surrogate. Okay, the surrogate is just the organism that holds on to ingest states, but the egg cell organism as well, this one would not share any genetic information.
Interesting. Very interesting. It looks like you, so to put it in layman's terms, it looks like you take the nucleus of a being, of the sheep in this instance. You, okay. So that's what I got so far. You take the nucleus, so and then something else from this brown sheep, fuse it together with electricity to make it an egg. You put the egg in a surrogate, and a surrogate would be just like the test dummy. Like it's just the place where it's just like a you put it to put it in. Okay, let's say for instance a human, you put it in like a woman, for the woman to give birth, but it doesn't take any of the genes of that woman in that instance. It's just where the birth would take place. So that sheep, that black sheep, is the surrogate. Boom, has the baby. Boom, that's where the clone comes out of, the black sheep.
So it's just the one that has
Interesting.
the nucleus removed. The nucleus is the bit of information that shares with the clone itself. Okay, and then we have an embryo transplant. So it's a slightly different version of cloning an animal. But essentially, what you do is you would have an organism, a male and a female. They would have the sperm and egg cell fused together to form an embryo. That embryo would then be used to split up and break apart into smaller sections, and then allowed to divide again. So we actually end up with multiple clones that all look the same. And this is because that embryo has been able to divide. However, that embryo will have slight differences in genetics to the adult parents. So as you can see, the clones are clones of one another, not the parents themselves, because we're forming an embryo to begin with. So adult cell cloning is the one where people have a lot of ethical objections, because we're literally forming the exact same organism. Whereas embryo transplant, you're forming lots of different clones, but they're not the clones of the adult itself. So, speaking of ethical considerations, people often say that they're not happy about this technology because of the animal welfare and the risks to the animal
The
itself.
morality.
Also, the effects it could have on the environment if we have lots of the same animal or lots of the same plant,
Is that
even.
how McDonald's works? Is that how they mass produce? Is cloning used to mass produce company? And that, because that's infinite. All you need is a few cows, right? That's just infinite meat. Is the meat still good? If is the clone meat good? Is clones meat good? Like, 'cause if it is, that is infinite food. And can we clone water? These are questions we need to ask, man.
When we do talk about plants, it could
As we only have a limited amount of resources, as we all know. So can we clone water? Can we clone meat? No, we know we can clone meat, but is clone meat good? That's what we need to be asking.
lead to problems with the ecosystem itself, and it could have an effect on those animals that are living there naturally. It could also lead to human cloning and obviously the morality issues and the idea of religious reasons as
Hmm.
well. But it could also encourage genetic.
That's another thing. Are the clones smart? Like, I've seen a bunch of you. We've all seen a bunch of movies and shows where the clone is turns out evil. Like, what? Yeah, I mean, there are so many questions. What is the? I would like to see I'd like to see a clone. How does the clone act compared to the regular? Or is it nothing like the show? Are they just literal clones? Like no difference, like same thing? So many questions, man. This is crazy. Can't
Diseases
believe
to
I'm just
develop, it
finding
could
out about
reduce
this.
genetic diversity, and of course, this idea of evolution, which Darwin theorized as natural selection, this would actually be reduced. And that's it from me today. I've been the GCSE science teacher, and you have been curious. If you did find this video interesting and helpful for your revision, let me know in the comment section.
Shout out the gosh darn GCSE science teacher. Phenomenal information. Phenomenal. Hey, this is helpful. Thanks. No, for real. No, shout out the teacher, man. Like that was great knowledge. Wow. We learned something today, chat. And that's all that matters. All right, on to the next one.